So a little public service announcement before I start this video here. I'm about to teach you about conservatism. And in this video, I just realized as I'm sitting here editing that throughout the whole video, I say I can hardly say it now, conservativism. That's not a word. I made it up. And this is why you should never learn a second language, because the second you learn a second language, it screws up your first language. It's conservatism in English, conservadorismo in Spanish. And because it's so many syllables in Spanish, I went and added a syllable in English too. So every time I say conservative, every time I say that word that I don't even know how I said 50 times in a row downstairs, just know that I'm saying it wrong, and that it's actually conservatism, and I'm just too lazy to go re-record the video. Enjoy. Hola chicos, I'm coming at you from my basement today because why not? I'm bored. And what I'd like to talk with you about from my basement is what we were talking about yesterday. Ideología política, political ideology in los Estados Unidos. Yesterday you learned a little bit about what it means to be liberal, what it means to be conservative, and how those two dominant ideologies in the American political system connect with our modern day political parties. What I'd like to do the next 2 days is focus in on both those ideologies individually. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at conservatism, conservadurismo, and how that connects with the modern day Republican Party. So what you hopefully learned yesterday about conservatism from Craig is that the ideology can kind of be divided into two parts. The first part has to deal with the size and scope of government. And conservatives are much more likely to want a government that's very limited in its size and scope. So conservatives want a government that's not going to intervene in the free market and regulate businesses. Conservatives want a government that's not going to create a bunch of government programs and then tax citizens in order to pay for those government programs. The one exception to this rule about the size and scope of government is that conservatives are more likely to spend money on defense. And so they're willing to spend money on military endeavors, not so much willing to spend money in other aspects of society, because they don't think that the government can do as good of a job as the private sector. So that is the size and scope, the libertarian branch of modern day conservatism. The second part of conservatism is much more social. And this is where you see modern day conservatism or the Republican Party kind of depart from libertarianism or the Libertarian Party. If you've ever heard of Gary Johnson, he's a libertarian that runs for president all the time. And this is what makes him different from Donald Trump or Mitt Romney. And the social part of conservatism, this is one way to think about it. Conservatives like to preserve things the way they are. They like to conserve tradition. And so conservatism is more likely to support things like prayer in school and the Pledge of Allegiance, because Christianity and patriotism are super traditional values in the United States of America. Conservatism is also more likely to be against things that kind of seem like a departure from tradition. And so conservatives are more likely to be pro-life and not support a woman's right to get an abortion. Conservatives are more likely to be anti-gay marriage and believe that marriage should be between one man and one woman. And this also kind of departs from the idea of government not being involved in the lives of citizens, because obviously the government saying a woman can't get an abortion or two guys can't get married is the government interfering in your lives. And so this is why conservatism and the modern day Republican Party are different from libertarianism and the modern day Libertarian Party, because the Libertarian Party never wants government really intervening in your life. That goes for economics and it goes for the bedroom at home. But when it comes to conservatives, it kind of depends on what part of society we're talking about. Economically, conservatives and libertarians are kind of together. But when it comes to social stuff, conservatives are more conservative than liberals, who tend to be more progressive on social issues. So what I want you to do today, folks, is I want you to watch a speech for the man who I think I can argue is more responsible than any other man for shaping modern day conservatism and the modern day Republican Party. That guy is one of the most venerated presidents, certainly the most venerated Republican president in recent memory. Goes by the name of Ronald Reagan. And the speech that you're watching is actually far ahead of his time as president. It's from 1964. He was president from 1981 to 1989. But this 1964 speech really outlines what Reagan would stand for as a candidate, as a president, and what the Republican Party really stands for today, or at least has stood for a long time. The election of Donald Trump in 2016 means that the Republican Party, we're not really sure where it's going, because Trump is a little different from Reagan. And so the election of 2020 will tell us a little bit more if the Republican Party is going in like a new direction, if conservatism is kind of going to evolve, or if Trump does not win re-election, if perhaps conservatism will return to more of this Reagan-oriented ideology. But when you watch that speech today, you're going to hear a lot of the things that define conservatism and the Republican Party today. You're going to hear Reagan rallying against taxes. You're going to hear him rallying against socialism and government planning for things like healthcare and education and the economy. And you're also going to hear him talking about the necessity for national security or defense. So here's your job. Your job is to find three quotes in this really long speech. And sometimes he kind of goes off tangents, like around like 5 to 10 minutes, and he starts talking about agriculture a lot, and you might kind of get lost in the weeds a little bit. But over that 30-minute speech, you should be able to find 3 quotes that kind of reflect some of the conservative Republican philosophy that we've been talking about the last 2 days. Your job is to write down those quotes, pause the video, make sure you get those quotes written down, and then in your own words, explain what those quotes mean or how those quotes represent the ideology of modern day conservatism in the United States of America, which oftentimes coincides with the modern day Republican Party. And then tomorrow, we'll look at a prominent Democrat and how liberalism has been shaped here coming into the 21st century. That's all for today, folks. Hasta mañana.